Failures don't deserve Christmas dinner. I can still hear my father's voice cutting through our kitchen like a blade. He was talking about my 18-year-old daughter Emma, and his words hung in the air while her art portfolio lay scattered across the floor where she'd dropped it in shock. Years of her soul poured onto canvas and paper, now just debris at our feet. By New Year's, they were all begging me to forgive them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that moment when I learned what my own parents really thought of my child, and when something deep inside me shifted from hurt to something far more dangerous. The betrayal started with hope. Emma had burst through our front door 3 weeks before Christmas, her cheeks flushed from December cold, clutching a thick envelope against her chest like it held the secrets of the universe. In a way, it did. "Mom," she breathed, her voice trembling with excitement as she tore open the envelope. It came. The Richmond Institute acceptance. I got in. I watched my daughter's hands shake as she read the letter aloud. Full scholarship to one of the most prestigious art schools on the East Coast. Plus a paid internship at Morrison Gallery. My brilliant, talented daughter who'd been painting since she could hold a brush had done the impossible. She'd proven that her art wasn't just a hobby, it was her calling. "Grandma and Grandpa are going to be so proud," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Maybe now they'll understand this isn't just playing around. This is real, Mom. This is my future." The optimism in her voice made my chest tight. She still believed they cared about her dreams. Still thought their approval was worth chasing. I should have warned her then about the family she was born into, should have prepared her for what was coming. But I was naive enough to hope that maybe this achievement would be enough to earn their respect. That hope died 4 days later when my phone rang. I was folding laundry when my mother's number appeared on the screen. She always called at inconvenient times, as if she had a radar for disrupting my peace. But this call would shatter more than just my afternoon routine. "Oh good, you're there," she said, her voice dripping with that particular brand of false sweetness she reserved for delivering devastating news. I was hoping we could chat about Christmas dinner. Something in her tone made me pause, a sock half folded in my hands. "What about it?" "Well," she drew out the word like she was savoring it, "we've invited so many guests this year. The Hendersons, the Walkers, your father's colleagues. It's going to be very tight for space." I felt the first prickle of unease. "Okay. So we were wondering if maybe Emma could just sit this one out. Just this year, you understand. You're still welcome, of course. It's not personal." But the way she said "not personal" told me it was absolutely, devastatingly personal. And then I heard them, voices in the background that she thought I couldn't hear, or maybe she wanted me to hear them. My father first, not even bothering to lower his voice as he spoke about his own granddaughter. "Tell her failures don't get Christmas dinner. We're not running a charity for wannabe artists." My sister Melissa chimed in, her laugh sharp and cruel. "That finger painting degree is honestly just embarrassing. What's she going to do? Sell sketches on street corners?" And then my father again, the man who used to bounce Emma on his knee. "Art school isn't real education. It's expensive daycare for people who can't handle real subjects." My mother shushed them half-heartedly. "Quiet, she can hear you." But she didn't hang up. She let me hear every word, every laugh, every casual dismissal of my daughter's dreams. She wanted me to know exactly what my family thought of Emma. "Mom?" I finally managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Look, she'll understand when she's older. This art phase will pass, and she'll thank us for not enabling her delusions. We're doing her a favor by not supporting this mistake." I ended the call without another word, my hands shaking as I set the phone down. The house felt different suddenly, like the walls had shifted while I wasn't looking. I stood there surrounded by Emma's artwork, paintings she'd given me over the years, sketches she'd left on the coffee table, a self-portrait she'd painted for Mother's Day. All of it beautiful. All of it dismissed by people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. But the real knife twist came later that evening. I was stress scrolling through social media, trying to process what had happened, when I saw my sister's Instagram story. A picture of a child's finger painting kit, the kind you buy at the dollar store, with the caption, "When your niece thinks crayons equal a career #reality check #art school." The comments rolled in fast from family members and friends. Not a real school, someone wrote. Pretty sure you can apply with a library card and a dream, added my cousin. Another relative posted 3 crying laughing emojis and wrote, fake school, fake degree, fake future. And there, at the bottom of the comment thread, was my father's username with a bright blue thumbs up. My own father had publicly endorsed the humiliation of his granddaughter. He'd liked a post mocking Emma's achievements, turning her moment of triumph into family entertainment. I screenshot everything, my fingers moving on autopilot while my mind reeled. This wasn't just about Christmas dinner. This was about systematic destruction, about making Emma feel small enough to give up on herself. They weren't just uninviting her, they were trying to crush her spirit entirely. That's when I started digging deeper, and what I found made my blood run cold. 3 months earlier, I'd helped my mother organize some old paperwork and seen documents I wasn't supposed to see. Legal papers, bank statements, mentions of something called the Morrison Educational Trust. When I'd asked about it, she'd brushed me off. Just old stuff from your great-grandmother. Nothing important. But now, with suspicion coursing through my veins, I called my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, the one who'd always been honest with me. What she told me made me sit down hard on my kitchen floor. That trust fund? Honey, your great-grandmother left $50,000 specifically for Emma's education. She set it up when Emma was 5, after she saw her painting that little watercolor landscape. Said the girl had the gift and deserved every opportunity to develop it. $50,000. For Emma. Money that should have been hers, that would have covered her art supplies, her portfolio development, the summer programs she'd begged to attend, but we couldn't afford. Money that my parents had known about all along. Where did it go? I whispered. My aunt's silence stretched too long. Melissa's MBA program took most of it. And her boy, the law school prep courses, the LSAT tutoring. Your parents said Emma's art wasn't a real investment, that the money would be wasted on creative pursuits. They'd stolen from their own granddaughter. Taken money specifically left for her dreams and given it to the golden children instead. All while telling Emma she'd have to earn scholarships because art isn't practical and we can't afford to support hobbies. I hung up and sat there on my kitchen floor, feeling something inside me crystallize into diamond-hard resolve. They thought they could humiliate my daughter, steal her inheritance, and exclude her from family traditions? They thought they could call their own granddaughter a failure while profiting from her great-grandmother's love? They had no idea what they'd just awakened in me. Emma was upstairs in her room, probably working on her portfolio for the spring semester, completely unaware that her own grandparents were systematically destroying her behind her back. She still believed in them. Still thought Christmas would be a celebration of her acceptance, a moment of validation she'd been waiting for her entire life. I wasn't going to let them take that from her. Not anymore. If this story is making you angry, imagine how I felt as a mother watching my own parents destroy my daughter's confidence. The like button is free, unlike the betrayal Emma faced from people who should have celebrated her achievements. Please hit the button for a wrong child, and subscribe to Revenge with Nick if you believe parents should protect their children from toxic family members, not enable their destruction. Because what happened next? My family never saw it coming. I stood up slowly, my legs steady beneath me for the first time since that phone call. My parents thought they held all the cards, thought they could control the narrative, thought they could crush dreams without consequences. They were about to learn how catastrophically wrong they were. To understand the magnitude of what I was planning, you need to understand the family dynasty that had shaped my entire existence. We weren't just successful, we were a 3-generation monument to academic achievement, a family that worshipped at the altar of prestige with religious devotion. My grandfather had been a cardiovascular surgeon, the kind whose hands saved lives and whose name appeared on hospital wings. My grandmother, a biochemist whose research on protein synthesis earned her recognition in journals I couldn't pronounce. Their legacy wasn't just professional success, it was a blueprint for what the family considered worthy of respect. The hallway in my parents' house told the story of our family's values. Instead of family photos like normal houses, it was lined with framed diplomas, medical licenses, bar admissions, and academic honors. Harvard Medical, Yale Law, Johns Hopkins. Stanford MBA. My mother called it the wall of achievement, but it felt more like a wall of judgment, a constant reminder that your worth was measured by the institution name on your degree. My parents had followed the sacred path dutifully. Dad became a neurologist, publishing papers that other doctors quoted in their research. Mom chose law, making partner at a firm that represented Fortune 500 companies. When my sister Melissa was born, she seemed to absorb these expectations through osmosis, announcing by age 5 that she wanted to be a business lady in a tall building who made lots of money and important decisions. The family loved her clarity of purpose. She was the heir apparent to the dynasty, the one who understood that achievement meant everything and sentiment meant nothing. And then there was Emma. From the moment she could hold a crayon, Emma saw the world differently. She drew horses in the margins of her math homework, saw faces in cloud formations, and spent hours mixing watercolors to capture the exact shade of sunset filtering through our kitchen window. When she accidentally stepped on flowers, she cried because they were trying so hard to be beautiful. My parents tried to redirect her for years, treating her artistic inclinations like a childhood phase that needed gentle correction. Art classes were fine as well-rounded development, but they enrolled her in advanced mathematics camps every summer. When she won the state middle school art competition, they downplayed it while spending 3 hours at dinner discussing my nephew's participation ribbon in the science fair. The nephew, Melissa's son Tyler, became the golden grandchild by default. He was following his father into law, had been accepted to the same prestigious university his parents attended, and spoke in bullet points about his 5-year career plan. More importantly, he fit the family template perfectly. Academic excellence, professional ambition, social connections that mattered. Every family gathering became a Tyler appreciation session. My parents would spend entire dinners discussing his LSAT prep scores, his internship applications, his acceptance to mock trial competitions. They paid for his test preparation courses, his academic coaching, his summer enrichment programs. When he needed a laptop for school, they bought him the top-of-the-line model. When he wanted to study abroad, they covered his expenses without hesitation. Emma would sit at these same dinners, quietly sketching portraits of the family members who barely acknowledged her presence, listening to endless praise for her cousin while her own achievements went unmentioned. But here's what they never bothered to learn about my daughter. While they were busy being embarrassed by her hobby, Emma was quietly building something meaningful, even if it wasn't yet financially significant. At 15, she sold her first painting to a local coffee shop for $200. The owner had seen her working on it during a school field trip and commissioned her to create a small series for the cafe walls. By 16, she was taking occasional portrait commissions from family friends who'd seen her work at school exhibitions. Small projects, family pets, graduation portraits, custom pieces for local businesses that paid between $300 and $600 each. Her art teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, helped her set up an online portfolio, and slowly Emma began receiving commission requests from across the region. But the work was sporadic, maybe 1 or 2 projects per month, bringing in perhaps $800 to $1,500 when she was lucky. Enough to show her potential, not enough to live on. Last spring, our local newspaper featured Emma in their Young Entrepreneurs section. The article called her a rising star with an exceptional eye for capturing human emotion in every brushstroke. It included photos of her artwork and quotes from satisfied clients who described her as professionally mature beyond her years and brilliantly talented. My parents never saw the article. They don't read the arts section of any newspaper, dismissing it as fluff that doesn't contain real news. The recognition their granddaughter received from the broader community was invisible to them because it fell outside their narrow definition of achievement. Meanwhile, Tyler was getting praised for making the dean's list with a 3.2 GPA, while Emma was building a reputation that could serve her for decades, even if the financial rewards hadn't materialized yet. But the pattern of dismissal and humiliation went back years, each incident carefully designed to make Emma understand her place in the family hierarchy. Emma's high school graduation fell on the same day as Tyler's acceptance dinner, some celebration Melissa had organized to mark his admission to law school. Without hesitation, my parents chose Tyler's party over their granddaughter's milestone. They missed Emma walking across the stage, missed her receiving the Fine Arts Excellence Award, missed the moment she'd worked toward for 4 years. "We'll celebrate Emma this weekend," my mother promised, but weekend came and went with nothing but a card containing a $20 gift certificate to an art supply store. Meanwhile, Tyler's acceptance dinner cost more than my monthly rent and included extended family members who flew in specifically to celebrate his achievement. Emma's 18th birthday was supposed to be special. I'd planned for weeks, made reservations at her favorite restaurant, invited her closest friends from school. But the morning of her birthday, Tyler called with news that he'd been selected for a competitive internship. The family dinner I'd organized for Emma became Tyler's impromptu celebration. Emma spent her birthday listening to toasts about her cousin's professional prospects, while her own milestone was reduced to an afterthought. When it came time for college applications, the contrast became even more stark. Tyler's application process was a family production. My parents hired a private college counselor, paid for multiple campus visits, and helped him craft essays that highlighted his diverse interests and leadership potential. They spent thousands of dollars on his applications and preparation. When Emma needed help with her art school applications, my parents refused to provide financial information for the FAFSA forms. "We can't sign those documents," my father said flatly. "We don't support educational mistakes." "Mistakes?" I repeated, stunned. "Art school isn't education," my mother added. "It's expensive daycare for people who can't handle real academic work. We won't put our financial information on record as supporting that choice." So Emma applied for scholarships on her own. Dozens of them. She wrote essays about overcoming adversity, submitted portfolios that showcased years of development, interviewed with admissions committees who recognized her exceptional talent. She fought for every penny of funding while my parents complained about being financially stretched. I believed them about the money troubles. I actually believed they were struggling, that maybe the comfortable lifestyle I remembered from childhood had become unsustainable in retirement. That's why when they started asking for help with bills, I said yes without question. It started with small requests. 100 here, 200 there. "Just until Dad's pension adjustment comes through," my mother would say. "You know how complicated academic retirement benefits can be." But while I was scraping together grocery money to help them, while Emma was working 3 part-time jobs and carefully budgeting every dollar she earned from her occasional art sales, while we were living paycheck to paycheck in our modest rental house, my parents were living very differently than they claimed. Emma shopped for art supplies at discount stores, mixed her own paints to save money, and ate ramen noodles for lunch so she could afford quality canvas for her few paying commissions. She walked to work because gas money meant fewer art materials. She was sacrificing everything to pursue her dreams while earning just enough from her art to know it was possible, but not enough to live comfortably. Last spring, my parents bought a brand new BMW X5. $68,000 worth of luxury vehicle sitting in their driveway while they claimed financial hardship. When I asked how they'd managed such a major purchase, my mother's explanation was casual and dismissive. "Oh, we've been saving for years. Your father's always wanted a luxury car, and we decided life's too short to wait." 2 months later, they announced their European vacation. 3 weeks touring Italy and France, staying in 4-star hotels, dining at restaurants that charged more for a single meal than Emma earned from most of her art commissions. The social media photos showed them at the Louvre, sipping wine in Tuscany, posing in front of the Colosseum like celebrities on holiday. How much did that trip cost? I asked when they returned, genuinely curious, because I hadn't taken a real vacation in 5 years. "About 15,000, my father said casually. "But you only live once, right? We worked hard our whole lives. We deserve to enjoy retirement." $15,000. More than Emma would earn from her art in an entire year of sporadic commissions. Money my parents spent on leisure while their granddaughter struggled to afford basic art supplies, and I sent them money I couldn't spare. Later, when the lawyers got involved, I learned the full scope of their deception. $800,000 in retirement funds. A fully paid-off house worth $300,000. Investment accounts, savings bonds, and a pension that provided more monthly income than I made working full-time. They had the money to support Emma's artistic education. They could have covered her supplies, her application fees, her portfolio development costs. Instead, they chose to fund luxury cars and international travel while telling their granddaughter that her dreams weren't worth investing in. They weren't just withholding support, they were sending a deliberate message. That Emma didn't matter. That her talent was worthless. That she was the disappointment grandchild who deserved less love, less investment, less belief in her future. This family had money, but chose cruelty over compassion. If you're watching this without subscribing, you're choosing indifference over justice. Hit subscribe to Revenge with Nick or explain in the comments why you won't stand up for a talented kid being systematically destroyed by her own family. But they had no idea what they'd created with their years of systematic dismissal and financial manipulation. They thought they'd convinced Emma she wasn't worthy of their support or respect. They thought they'd kept her small and struggling enough to eventually give up on her dreams. Instead, they'd made her resilient and determined. And they'd turned me into something they never saw coming, a mother with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with every financial document I could find, spreading them across the surface like pieces of a puzzle that would reveal the full scope of my family's betrayal. Bank statements, tax returns, old legal papers I'd kept in a shoebox for years without really understanding their significance. I was looking for proof, for concrete evidence of what my Aunt Patricia had told me about Emma's stolen inheritance. It took me 3 hours of methodical searching, but I found it buried in a manila folder labeled Estate Documents, my grandmother's will, dated 12 years ago when Emma was only 6. There it was, written in precise legal language that made my hands shake as I read. I hereby establish the Morrison Educational Trust in the amount of $50,000. To be used exclusively for the higher education expenses of my great-granddaughter Emma Claire Morrison, with particular emphasis on supporting her artistic development and creative pursuits. Particular emphasis on supporting her artistic development. My grandmother had seen Emma's gift when she was barely out of kindergarten. She'd watched a 6-year-old mix watercolors with the focus of a master and recognized something extraordinary. She'd believed in her great-granddaughter's talent enough to set aside a substantial sum specifically for art school, specifically for the path everyone else in the family dismissed as worthless. The will was signed, notarized, legally binding. Emma should have received that money when she turned 18 or upon college enrollment, whichever came first. She'd turned 18 4 months ago. The Richmond Institute acceptance letter had arrived 3 weeks ago. The money should have been sitting in an account with her name on it by now. Instead, when I accessed the trust account online using the information from the will, the balance showed exactly $847.23. Nearly $50,000 vanished. I called Jennifer Hayes the next morning. She was an estate attorney who'd helped me navigate my divorce 3 years earlier, and she'd always been direct about legal realities. When I showed her the documentation spread across her conference table, her expression grew grimmer with each page she reviewed. "This is textbook misappropriation of trust funds," she said, adjusting her glasses. "If you can prove where the money went and that it was used for purposes other than Emma's education, you have grounds for both recovery and potentially criminal charges against the trustees." "How do I prove where it went?" Jennifer's smile was sharp as a blade. "Bank records. The trustee, which appears to be your father, would have had to transfer funds out of this account. Those transfers leave digital paper trails that banks are required to maintain for years. It took 2 weeks to get the complete bank records through Jennifer's legal subpoena requests, but when they arrived, they told the devastating story of my family's systematic theft. The documentation was damning in its clarity. The first major withdrawal, $28,000 in August 2019, transferred directly to an account in Melissa's name. The memo line read, "Educational expenses, M. Morrison." My sister's MBA program, funded with Emma's inheritance while Emma struggled to afford art supplies and applied for scholarships alone. The second withdrawal, $15,000 in March 2021, transferred to an account belonging to Tyler. The memo, educational support, T. Morrison. My nephew's LSAT prep courses, private tutoring, and law school application consulting, all paid for with money specifically designated for Emma's artistic education. The final large withdrawal, $6,000 just 8 months ago, transferred directly to my parents' personal checking account. No memo, no explanation, just gone. Probably used for their European vacation while Emma worked multiple jobs to afford basic art materials. Emma's inheritance, the money specifically left to nurture her artistic talent, had been systematically stolen and redistributed to the golden children. While she was eating ramen noodles and walking to work to save money, they were using her great-grandmother's gift to fund the educations of family members who already had every advantage. The good news, Jennifer said when I showed her the records, is that this is an open and shut case for recovery. The bad news is that getting the money back through traditional court proceedings could take months or even years. But I wasn't thinking about court timelines. I was thinking about Christmas, about the public humiliation they'd planned for Emma, about the systematic destruction of her self-worth they'd been orchestrating for years. Money was important, but justice was more immediate and more satisfying. That's when I remembered Emma mentioning her mentor, someone in the local art scene who'd been following her development. Rebecca Chin was a painter whose work hung in galleries across 4 states, a woman whose opinion carried weight in artistic circles. I'd met her briefly at Emma's last school exhibition, but I hadn't understood the significance of her interest in my daughter's work. I called Rebecca that evening, explaining who I was and asking if we could meet privately. When I told her what my family had done, the Christmas exclusion, the mocking social media posts, the stolen trust fund, her reaction was swift and fierce. I've been watching Emma's development for 2 years, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. She's not just talented, she's exceptional. What your family is doing is artistic abuse. They're trying to kill something beautiful before it can fully bloom, and I won't stand for it. Rebecca knew people. Gallery owners, art collectors, journalists who covered the cultural scene, critics whose reviews could make or break emerging artists. More importantly, she knew Marcus Webb, who owned Harris Gallery downtown, the same gallery where Emma had been offered her internship. Marcus owes me a significant favor, Rebecca said thoughtfully. I once convinced 3 major collectors to invest in his struggling artists when he was about to lose everything. What exactly are you thinking? I told her my plan, and her smile was sharp as broken glass. Let's give Emma the launch she deserves. The next morning, I began building my alliance of witnesses and supporters, starting with my Aunt Patricia. She'd been waiting for someone to challenge my parents for years, collecting evidence of their favoritism and cruelty, like a prosecutor building a case. I have documentation you don't even know exists, she told me when I called. Photos from every single one of Emma's art shows throughout high school, the ones your parents skipped. Newspaper clippings from her various achievements. Award certificates from competitions they never bothered to attend. I've been quietly documenting Emma's success while your parents were busy ignoring it. But Patricia had something even more powerful than documentation. She had my grandmother's personal letters, written in the final years of her life when she was becoming increasingly worried about Emma's future in this family. She wrote about Emma constantly, Patricia said. About how proud she was of her artistic gift, how she worried that your parents would try to steer her away from art. She specifically mentioned setting up the trust fund because she was afraid they would prioritize Tyler's conventional career over Emma's creative potential. Even from beyond the grave, my grandmother had seen this coming. The family friend who became my most powerful ally was someone I hadn't expected, David Martinez, editor of our local newspaper and, ironically, a longtime friend of my parents. He'd been invited to their Christmas dinner for 7 years running. His wife collected art, and they'd actually purchased one of Emma's smaller pieces at a silent auction fundraiser for the school arts program. When I called David and explained the situation, his journalist instincts kicked in immediately. This is a story, he said, excitement creeping into his voice. Multi-generational family dynasty systematically destroys artistic prodigy. financial manipulation, emotional abuse, public humiliation. And you're telling me they're planning to exclude her from Christmas dinner in front of 22 witnesses. I'd done my homework on that guest list. My mother had sent me the email weeks earlier when she was still pretending I was invited. 22 confirmed attendees, and I knew every single name. The Hendersons, serious art collectors who'd been buying pieces from local artists for 2 decades. Robert Henderson sat on the board of the Regional Arts Council, and his wife Janet had donated thousands to establish scholarships for young artists. They valued artistic achievement over academic pedigree. The Walkers, he was a retired gallery owner who'd spent 40 years promoting emerging talent. She was an art history professor at the community college. They'd built their entire professional lives around recognizing and nurturing artistic potential. Dr. Sarah Kim and her husband, both physicians. They understood the value of creativity in healing and human development. Professor Martinez and his wife, longtime family friends, but their adult daughter was also an artist struggling to build her career. They'd see Emma's story as a cautionary tale about family support versus family sabotage. My parents had inadvertently assembled the perfect audience for Emma's vindication. These weren't people who'd be impressed by academic snobbery or swayed by arguments about practical career choices. They were people who valued artistic talent, understood the challenges young artists faced, and had the social and financial power to change Emma's trajectory overnight. Half these people are already involved in the local art scene, David pointed out as we went through the list together. The Hendersons just donated $50,000 to establish an emergency fund for artists facing financial hardship. Dr. Kim commissioned that beautiful mural at the Children's Hospital. These aren't people who'll tolerate your parents' treatment of Emma once they understand what's really happening. That's when the complete plan crystallized in my mind with perfect, devastating clarity. My parents thought they were going to humiliate Emma in front of their friends, use social pressure to crush her confidence, and force her to abandon her dreams. They'd assembled an audience to witness their granddaughter's destruction. Instead, I was going to turn that audience into Emma's champions, her first major patrons, her professional network. I was going to use their own guest list to launch my daughter's career while simultaneously exposing their cruelty to the very people whose opinions they valued most. Marcus Webb agreed to host an emergency exhibition at his gallery on Christmas Day when Rebecca called in her favor. For a talent like Emma's, and considering what Rebecca's told me about the family situation, I'll open my doors any day of the year, he said. This isn't just about one girl's artistic future. It's about standing up to people who think they can crush creativity because it doesn't fit their narrow definition of success. The exhibition would feature Emma's best work from the past 3 years, including several smaller commissioned pieces that had earned her modest amounts while my parents dismissed her hobby. Price tags would be clearly displayed, showing the true market value of work they considered worthless. Achievement timelines would document her scholarships, awards, and recognition, all the milestones they'd ignored or missed. But the centerpiece would be Emma's latest and largest commission, a landscape piece for a local law firm's conference room. The commission fee, $4,000. Her biggest single sale to date, more than Tyler made in his summer internship. David would cover the exhibition for the newspaper, creating a permanent record of Emma's achievements and the community support she'd earned. But more importantly, he'd be there as a witness to document everything that happened when my parents' carefully curated social circle chose between supporting a talented young woman and enabling family cruelty. The invitations went out on December 18th, exactly 1 week after my mother's devastating phone call. Simple, elegant cards featuring Emma's artwork on the front and a message that made my heart race every time I read it. You're invited to celebrate the artistic achievements of Emma Morrison, recipient of the Richmond Institute Full Scholarship and Regional Arts Council Rising Artist Award. Join us for an afternoon of wine, celebration, and the unveiling of her latest major commission. December 25th, 2 p.m., Morrison Gallery. Please RSVP to witness the launch of an exceptional career. But I wasn't done yet. The investigation had revealed the financial betrayal, the alliances had built unshakable support for Emma, and the event planning had created the perfect stage for justice. Now came the most delicious part of all, the execution phase, where my parents would finally understand exactly what they'd lost and why they'd never get it back. They thought they'd won by excluding Emma from Christmas. They had no idea they'd just handed me the keys to their complete destruction. The phone calls began on December 19th, and each conversation was a surgical strike designed to dismantle my parents' social foundation one relationship at a time. I had 22 names, 22 phone numbers, and 22 chances to show people who my family really was behind their carefully constructed facade. I started with Janet Henderson, knowing her voice would carry weight with the others. "Janet, it's Claire Morrison," I said when she answered. "I hope you don't mind me calling, but I need to share something important about Emma before Christmas." "Of course, dear. How is that talented daughter of yours?" The irony of her calling Emma talented while my own parents called her a failure wasn't lost on me. That's exactly what I need to talk about. Emma just received a full scholarship to Richmond Institute of Fine Arts, plus a paid internship at Morrison Gallery. But there's something you should know about how my parents are responding to this achievement. I told Janet everything, watching my words land like precision bombs. The Christmas disinvitation. The cruel comments about failures not deserving dinner. The social media mockery. The stolen trust fund that should have been Emma's education money. Janet's silence stretched longer with each revelation. "They called her a failure," she finally whispered. "Claire, Emma painted a beautiful portrait of my late mother last year. She captured something in her expression that professional photographers missed. The way she sees emotion, composition, light, it's remarkable. How could anyone call that child a failure?" That's exactly why I'm calling. Emma doesn't know about the trust fund theft or the exclusion yet. I'm planning something for Christmas Day that will show her how many people truly recognize her talent. Would you consider attending an exhibition of her work instead of my parents' dinner? Janet didn't hesitate. "Send me the details immediately. Robert and I will be there, and we'll bring our checkbook. That girl deserves to see her work valued properly." The conversation with Dr. Sarah Kim went even better, with the added precision of medical training in her outrage. "What you're describing is systematic psychological abuse," she said coldly. "Financial manipulation, emotional neglect, deliberate undermining of self-worth. Claire, in my practice, we'd classify this as a form of family violence. Taking inheritance money designated specifically for Emma's education and giving it to other family members while publicly mocking her achievements? That's not family dynamics. That's cruelty with intent." By the time I called Professor Martinez, word was already spreading through their interconnected social circle. "Janet Henderson called me 20 minutes ago," he said. "She's furious. Says she's been unknowingly complicit in your parents' treatment of Emma by attending their dinners while they systematically destroyed her confidence. She wants to make this right in a very public way." The pattern repeated with devastating consistency. Shock at the trust fund theft. Anger at the Christmas exclusion. Immediate commitment to attend Emma's exhibition instead. But most importantly, each person shared their own memories of Emma's exceptional talent, their own bewilderment at my family's blindness to her gifts. "She painted our garden last spring," Mrs. Walker said. "Captured the morning light filtering through the oak tree with such artistic sensitivity. I hung it in our living room, and every guest comments on it. How could your parents not see what everyone else sees so clearly?" By December 21st, 18 of 22 guests had confirmed attendance at Emma's exhibition. They weren't just coming, they were bringing friends, colleagues, other art enthusiasts from their personal networks. What started as a guest list of 22 had grown to over 40 people, all coming to celebrate the talent my parents had tried to crush. While I was systematically dismantling my parents' social support network, Jennifer Hayes was preparing the legal ammunition that would hit them like a freight train. The demand letter arrived at their house on December 22nd, delivered by certified mail with signature required, ensuring there would be no denying receipt. "Notice of misappropriation of trust funds," read the header in bold, threatening letters. The body laid out the evidence with prosecutorial precision: the original trust document, the bank transfer records, the legal obligation to use funds exclusively for Emma's education, and the severe consequences for violation of fiduciary duty. But the cease and desist order was my personal masterpiece. It specifically prohibited my parents from making any further public statements disparaging Emma's educational choices, artistic abilities, or career prospects. It cited the Instagram posts, the family group chat mockery, and witness accounts of verbal disparagement during family gatherings. Any further public humiliation or disparagement of Emma Morrison's artistic pursuits will result in immediate legal action for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with business relations. The letter concluded. This includes, but is not limited to, social media posts, family gatherings, and conversations with mutual acquaintances. Jennifer had also prepared comprehensive documentation of what she termed systematic financial and emotional abuse spanning multiple years. The evidence included preferential treatment toward other family members, proof of available funds being withheld from Emma while being freely given to others, and a detailed pattern of psychological manipulation designed to undermine her confidence and career prospects. If they want to fight this in court, Jennifer told me, we'll destroy them publicly. Trust fund theft, emotional abuse, financial manipulation, it's all documented. Most people in their position settle quietly to avoid the humiliation of public proceedings. The exhibition setup began on December 23rd, and watching Marcus Webb treat Emma's work with the same reverence he showed established artists was deeply satisfying. He'd cleared his entire main gallery space, arranging her pieces with museum-quality lighting and professional display techniques. 18 paintings and drawings, arranged chronologically to show her artistic development from age 14 to 18. The progression was stunning. You could literally watch her talent evolve and mature over 4 years while her grandparents remained oblivious to her growing mastery. The price tags told a story my parents had never bothered to learn. Early high school pieces, $400 to $700. More recent work, $800 to $1,200. The few commission pieces, $1,500 to $2,500 each. And prominently displayed in the center of the gallery, the law firm landscape that had earned her $4,000, her largest single commission and more money than Tyler made in his entire summer internship. Patricia and Mrs. Rodriguez had worked together to create the achievement timeline that would serve as my parents' public humiliation. Every award, every scholarship, every recognition Emma had received while her grandparents dismissed her talent. The Richmond Institute acceptance letter was professionally framed and spotlighted, along with documentation of the full scholarship worth $68,000 over 4 years. When people see this display, Marcus said, stepping back to survey our work, they're going to understand that your parents didn't just miss their granddaughter's potential, they actively tried to destroy something exceptional. Emma still had no idea what was happening. As far as she knew, we weren't attending Christmas dinner because of a family disagreement, and she was spending Christmas Day helping me prepare for a quiet celebration at home. She had no idea that half the city's art establishment was planning to celebrate her achievements while her own grandparents sat at home with their devastated social circle. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold, but inside Harris Gallery, everything was golden and warm. The catered reception was elegant without being ostentatious. Wine, artisanal cheeses, finger foods that wouldn't compete with the main attraction. David Martinez arrived early with his photographer, ready to document everything for the story that would run in the next day's paper. At 1:45 p.m., I told Emma we needed to make a quick stop before heading home for our quiet Christmas celebration. "Where are we going?" she asked, confused by our downtown destination. "You'll see," I said, pulling up in front of Harris Gallery where her name appeared on the banner outside in elegant script. When Emma saw the display, her face went completely white. "Mom, what is this?" "This is what happens when people actually pay attention to your talent instead of trying to diminish it," I said, helping her out of the car. "This is what recognition looks like when it comes from people who matter." The guests began arriving at exactly 2 p.m., each entrance a small victory in my carefully orchestrated campaign. Janet and Robert Henderson, carrying champagne and wearing their finest clothes like they were attending a museum opening. Dr. Kim and her husband, beaming with pride as if Emma were their own granddaughter. Professor Martinez with his wife and 2 adult children who were also struggling artists. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled Emma into a fierce hug the moment she walked in. "I am so proud of you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You deserve all of this recognition and so much more." Rebecca Chin arrived with 3 other professional artists, all eager to meet the young talent they'd heard so much about. Marcus Webb gave a brief speech about Emma's exceptional promise and the brilliant future ahead of her. David Martinez moved through the crowd with his photographer, documenting the celebration while people shared stories of how Emma's art had touched their lives. But the moment that shattered my heart in the most beautiful way was when Emma stood in front of her largest painting, the $4,000 commission, and whispered, "People actually care about my work. They really see it." "People have always cared," I told her quietly. "You just weren't surrounded by the right people before today." The sales began almost immediately, and watching my daughter's confidence bloom with each transaction was worth every moment of planning. The Hendersons purchased 2 pieces for their private collection, writing a check for $1,500 without hesitation. Dr. Kim commissioned a memorial portrait of her late father for $2,000. Professor Martinez's daughter bought one of Emma's smaller works with money she'd saved from her part-time job, telling Emma she wanted to support a fellow artist. By 4 p.m., Emma had sold over $8,000 worth of art and received 12 new commission requests that would keep her busy through her first year of art school. But more important than the money was watching my daughter's transformation as person after person told her how talented she was, how proud they were of her achievements, how excited they were to watch her career flourish. That's when my phone rang with the call I'd been anticipating all day. I stepped outside to answer, knowing exactly who it would be and savoring every second of their panic. My mother's voice was shaking with barely controlled rage when I picked up. "What the hell did you do?" she hissed. "Where is everyone?" We made dinner for 22 people, and exactly 4 people showed up. 4. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? About as humiliating as calling your granddaughter a failure and excluding her from Christmas dinner, I imagine, I replied with deadly calm. "You sabotaged our Christmas. You turned our friends against us. I didn't turn anyone against you," I interrupted. "I simply told them the truth about how you've been treating Emma, and they made their own choices. Apparently, most decent people prefer celebrating exceptional talent over enabling family cruelty." My father's voice joined the chaos in the background, shouting about family loyalty and respect and how I was destroying everything. Melissa was crying about her ruined Christmas and how embarrassing it was to sit at a nearly empty table with catered food for 22 people. "We're going to see you for this," my mother threatened desperately. "This is harassment. This is defamation. Actually," I said, cutting through her hysteria, "you should know that you'll be receiving some additional legal documents soon. The $50,000 you stole from Emma's education trust fund? My attorney says we can recover it with interest, plus pursue criminal charges for misappropriation of funds. So before you start making threats about lawsuits, you might want to consult your own lawyer about defending against felony charges." The silence that followed was absolutely exquisite. "You're destroying this family," my father finally said, his voice cold and defeated. "No," I replied, watching through the gallery window as Emma laughed with her new supporters and admirers. "I'm protecting my daughter from this family. There's a significant difference." I hung up and turned off my phone, walking back into the gallery where Emma was surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated her achievements, who recognized her potential, who believed in her future. She was glowing with the kind of confidence that comes from being truly valued for who you are. My daughter went from failure to local celebrity in one afternoon. If you're still not subscribed to Revenge with Nick, you're missing every epic comeback story I share. Are you really going to let other people witness justice being served while you sit on the sidelines doing nothing? Subscribe now or admit in the comments that you don't actually care about talented underdogs winning against toxic family members. But this was just the opening act. The real consequences were about to unfold in ways that would reshape our family permanently, and my parents had no idea how completely their world was about to change forever. The newspaper story hit the stands on December 26th, like a precision missile targeting my parents' carefully constructed reputation. David Martinez had crafted a masterpiece of local journalism under the headline, "Local Teen Artist Overcomes Family Opposition to Achieve Scholarship Success." The front page featured a stunning photograph of Emma standing next to her $4,000 commission, surrounded by admirers and collectors at her gallery exhibition. But it was the subheading that delivered the killing blow. Community rallies around exceptional young talent after family dismisses her achievements. David had been masterful with his language, focusing on the positive story of community support while letting readers draw their own conclusions about family dysfunction. The article highlighted Emma's full scholarship to Richmond Institute, her growing list of commissions, and the spontaneous Christmas Day celebration that had drawn art enthusiasts from across the region. The photograph spread was devastating in its quiet power. Emma's artwork filled an entire page, with price tags clearly visible showing the market value of work her grandparents had dismissed as worthless. A timeline of her achievements ran along the sidebar, documenting 4 years of awards, scholarships, and recognition that her own family had never bothered to acknowledge. But the quotes from exhibition attendees were what transformed the story from local interest to social media phenomenon. Janet Henderson. Emma's work demonstrates emotional maturity and technical excellence that rivals artists with decades more experience. Any family would be honored to have such extraordinary talent. Dr. Kim. Her ability to capture human emotion in every brushstroke makes her one of the most promising young artists I've encountered in my 40 years of collecting. The story exploded across social media platforms within hours. Local art enthusiasts shared it with comments like, "This girl is absolutely brilliant, and so proud to have artists like this representing our community." The gallery's Instagram post from the exhibition garnered over 4,000 likes in a single day, with comments pouring in from potential buyers and other young artists inspired by Emma's story. But the viral moment came when Rebecca Chin shared the article on her professional social media accounts, reaching art communities across multiple states. "This is what it looks like when a family tries to destroy exceptional talent, and what happens when a community refuses to let that destruction succeed," she wrote. The post was shared hundreds of times by artists, collectors, and gallery owners who recognized both Emma's talent and the importance of supporting young artists against family opposition. When I tallied the final numbers from Christmas Day, the results exceeded my wildest expectations. Emma had sold $8,700 worth of art in a single afternoon, more money than she'd earned in her entire previous year of sporadic commissions. But more importantly, she'd received 12 new commission requests ranging from $1,500 to $3,000 each. The 3 major opportunities that emerged from the exhibition were even more significant than the immediate sales. A prominent law firm commissioned a series of paintings for their new offices, $8,000 total. A wealthy couple wanted portraits of their grandchildren for their anniversary, $5,000. And the commission that truly established Emma's professional credentials came from the mayor's office. They wanted her to paint a mural for the new community center, a $12,000 project that would permanently display her work where thousands of people would see it daily. But while Emma's star was rising at unprecedented speed, my family's world was collapsing in spectacular fashion that provided endless entertainment. The voicemails from Melissa started on December 27th, each one more unhinged than the last. "Claire, what you did was unforgivable," she sobbed in the first message at 6:30 a.m. "Do you have any idea what you've done to our family's reputation? Kevin's medical colleagues are asking questions about why we excluded our own family member from Christmas when it was featured in the newspaper. I had to lie and say we were out of town because I couldn't explain that we deliberately excluded our niece from family celebrations. You've made us look like monsters." The irony was exquisite. She was devastated about looking like a monster, but completely unmoved by actually being one. My parents' damage control attempts were even more pathetic and desperate. My mother called every mutual acquaintance she could think of, spinning increasingly elaborate lies to explain the newspaper coverage. She claimed there had been a scheduling misunderstanding about Christmas plans. She insisted they'd always been Emma's biggest supporters and that the newspaper had misrepresented the family dynamics. But the problem with lies is that they crumble when people have evidence. The Hendersons had screenshots of Melissa's Instagram story mocking Emma's art school acceptance. Dr. Kim vividly remembered my parents missing Emma's high school graduation to attend Tyler's academic celebration. Professor Martinez recalled multiple conversations where my parents had dismissed Emma's achievements while bragging extensively about Tyler's conventional success. The extended family began choosing sides with brutal efficiency that left my parents completely isolated. Patricia publicly shared the newspaper article on Facebook with a caption that destroyed any remaining pretense, "So incredibly proud of my great-niece Emma." Some of us have always recognized her extraordinary talent and supported her dreams, even when others in the family chose cruelty over compassion. The post included photos from Emma's art shows throughout high school, events my parents had skipped but Patricia had attended religiously. My cousin David, who'd initially declined to attend the exhibition, sent me a private message that revealed how completely the narrative had shifted. "I had no idea your parents were treating Emma like that. Sarah's been wanting to learn to paint, and after seeing Emma's work in the newspaper, she's more determined than ever." Would Emma consider giving art lessons to kids who come from unsupportive families? But the social ostracization hit my parents where it hurt most, their precious status in the academic and cultural community they'd spent decades cultivating. The country club they'd belonged to for 15 years suddenly became hostile territory. Too many members had read the newspaper article, connected the dots about family members who would exclude a talented granddaughter from Christmas dinner, and formed their own opinions about such people. My mother's book club forgot to invite her to their January meeting. My father was conspicuously excluded from the university's annual faculty appreciation dinner, an event he'd attended for 12 years. Their social calendar, once packed with academic gatherings and cultural events, became mysteriously empty as people distanced themselves from a family that had publicly humiliated an exceptionally talented young woman. The legal victory came faster than even Jennifer Hayes had predicted. Within 5 days of receiving our demand letter, my parents' attorney called requesting an immediate settlement conference. They absolutely did not want this case going to court where the trust fund theft would become public record and the systematic financial abuse would be documented in legal proceedings that journalists could access. The settlement terms were simple and utterly devastating. Immediate return of the $50,000 plus 5 years of compound interest, totaling $63,400. But the money wasn't the part that destroyed them emotionally. The public apology was. Jennifer had insisted on a formal, written apology that would be published in the same newspaper that had featured Emma's triumph. My parents had to publicly acknowledge their failure to recognize and support Emma's exceptional artistic talent, express deep regret for not encouraging her educational pursuits, and commit to respecting and celebrating her career choices going forward. Reading that apology in print, knowing that everyone in their social and professional circles would see them admit to systematically undermining their own granddaughter, was satisfaction beyond anything I could have imagined. But Melissa's consequences were even more personally devastating. The settlement required her to return the $28,000 that had been stolen from Emma's trust fund to pay for her MBA. Money she'd already spent on tuition, money she didn't have sitting in accounts waiting to be returned. She had to take out a personal loan to repay Emma's inheritance, essentially going into debt to return money that was never rightfully hers. Her monthly loan payments would serve as a constant reminder of her participation in stealing from her own niece, a financial penalty that would last for years. The professional validation that followed was sweeter than any revenge I could have planned myself. Marcus Webb offered Emma permanent representation at his gallery, making her the youngest artist on his roster. "Your talent speaks for itself," he told her during the contract signing, "but your story of overcoming family adversity to achieve your dreams makes you truly remarkable." The Richmond Institute, upon learning about Emma's Christmas exhibition success, offered her an additional opportunity that cemented her professional reputation. a part-time teaching position in their youth outreach program, specifically mentoring young artists who faced family opposition to their creative pursuits. We want instructors who not only create exceptional art, but who understand the unique challenges young artists face when families don't support their dreams, the dean explained. Your experience overcoming systematic discouragement makes you perfect for helping other students navigate similar situations. The regional art magazine Southern Palette featured Emma in their prestigious Rising Stars issue with a 4-page spread showcasing her work and telling her story of triumph over family adversity. The article positioned her as an inspiration for young artists everywhere who faced opposition from people who should have been their biggest supporters. But the commission that truly established Emma's place in the professional art world came from the most unexpected source. The city's Public Art Committee, impressed by her gallery exhibition success and media coverage, commissioned her to create the Community Center mural. The $12,000 project would be her largest work to date, permanently displayed where thousands of community members would see it every year. The subject they chose was particularly meaningful: community support for young dreams. Emma would paint a mural celebrating the power of believing in young talent, the importance of nurturing creativity, and the beauty that emerges when potential is recognized rather than crushed. It was a public rebuke to anyone who thought destroying young people's dreams was acceptable, and my parents would drive past it every day for the rest of their lives. By the end of January, Emma had earned more money in 5 weeks than she'd made in her entire previous year. The girl they'd called a failure was building financial independence through her art while studying at one of the most prestigious creative institutions in the country. She'd gone from family disappointment to community treasure in less than a month, proving that talent and determination could overcome even the most systematic family sabotage. The consequences were total, permanent, and absolutely deserved. 6 months later, Emma's transformation was complete and irreversible. Her first solo exhibition at Harris Gallery didn't just succeed, it sold out in 3 hours. Every piece, from intimate sketches to large canvases, found buyers who recognized they were witnessing the emergence of a major artistic talent. The prices had grown substantially. Pieces that would have sold for $800 in December were now commanding $2,500 to $4,000 each. The national recognition followed swiftly. Art in America featured Emma in their annual 30 Under 30 issue, profiling young artists destined to reshape contemporary culture. The write-up praised her emotional sophistication that transcends her age and technical mastery rarely seen in emerging artists. Her story, the prodigy who overcame systematic family sabotage, resonated with readers nationwide. By June, Emma's annual income had reached $47,000 from art sales and commissions. Tyler, meanwhile, was struggling through his first year of law school with mediocre grades and mounting student debt. The failure was out-earning the golden grandchild while building a sustainable creative career, and everyone in our community knew it. My parents still hadn't apologized privately to Emma. Not once. Their public newspaper apology had been legal necessity, not genuine remorse. Their silence spoke volumes about who they really were beneath the academic facade. But while Emma soared, Melissa's world crumbled in ways that provided endless satisfaction. The trust fund scandal had reached her consulting firm through professional networks she'd spent years cultivating. When her employer learned that their rising star had used misappropriated funds to pay for her MBA, they launched an internal investigation into her character and integrity. They're questioning whether someone who would steal from family can be trusted with client finances, she sobbed in a voicemail. Kevin says he feels deceived about who I really am. He's talking about separation because he never knew I was capable of this kind of deception. Her marriage was disintegrating under the weight of financial scandal and public humiliation. Kevin's medical colleagues, always image-conscious, began distancing themselves from a family embroiled in theft and cruelty. Dinner invitations stopped. Professional networking events became gauntlets of whispered conversations and judgmental stares. The extended family reckoning was perhaps most satisfying of all. My cousin Sarah commissioned Emma to paint a memorial portrait of our shared grandmother, the woman who'd left the trust fund, for $3,000. I should have supported Emma years ago instead of being intimidated by her parents' academic snobbery, she admitted. Patricia went nuclear on social media, posting a detailed account of my parents' treatment of Emma over the years. Some relatives build up their children and grandchildren, she wrote. Others systematically destroy them to maintain their own sense of superiority. I'm proud to stand with those who choose love over cruelty. The post included photos from Emma's latest exhibition and links to purchase her artwork. My uncle Robert called with an admission that validated everything I'd observed. I always knew your parents played favorites between Emma and Tyler, he said quietly. The way they treated those kids so differently was obvious to anyone paying attention. I should have said something years ago. The annual family reunion in September became a referendum on my parents' behavior. For the first time in 24 years, they weren't invited. The organizers, led by Patricia, made it clear that people who publicly humiliated family members weren't welcome at family celebrations. Emma attended as the honored guest, her artwork displayed throughout the venue, her success celebrated by relatives who'd finally found courage to choose between enabling cruelty and supporting exceptional talent. Success is the best revenge, but justice hits even sweeter. If you've made it this far without subscribing to Revenge with Nick, that isn't fair. I spend countless hours researching these epic comeback stories while you get entertainment for free. Hit that subscribe button or explain to my growing audience why you think you deserve free content without supporting the channel that delivers justice. The isolation was total and permanent. My parents had traded their granddaughter's love for their own arrogance, and now they sat alone with the consequences. They'd lost their social standing, their family connections, their community respect, and their legacy. All because they couldn't see past their narrow definition of success long enough to recognize the extraordinary gift sitting right in front of them. But this was just the foundation for Emma's complete vindication. 1 year after that Christmas exhibition, Emma's life looked nothing like the future my parents had predicted for their failure granddaughter. Her annual income had reached $89,000, making her one of the highest-earning young artists in the region. She was teaching online masterclasses to students worldwide, sharing techniques with aspiring artists whose families actually supported their dreams. The most beautiful development was her engagement to Davis Williams, a sculptor she'd met at that first exhibition. He was Rebecca's nephew, and their relationship was built on mutual respect for creativity and shared artistic ambition, everything my parents' marriage had never been. In September, Emma made a down payment on her first home using art earnings alone. A beautiful craftsman house with a converted studio, something my parents claimed would never be possible with an art hobby. At 19, she was building equity while 40-year-old Melissa was renting after her divorce. Meanwhile, my parents' isolation had become total. Their social circle had evaporated entirely. Melissa had fled to California, claiming a job opportunity, but really escaping the shame that followed her everywhere. Their attempts at reconciliation grew more desperate as Emma's success became impossible to ignore, but their revisionist history fooled no one. They started claiming they'd always supported Emma's art and that the Christmas incident had been blown out of proportion. But Emma didn't care about their lies anymore. When Emma announced her engagement, the wedding invitation question arose immediately. She didn't hesitate. They chose to exclude me from family celebrations, she said simply. Now I'm choosing to exclude them from mine. Melissa sent a desperate 6-page letter begging forgiveness, claiming she'd learned from her mistakes. Emma read it once, filed it away, and never responded. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. But Emma's story created ripple effects beyond our family drama. She established the Morrison Arts Scholarship Fund in her great-grandmother's memory, providing support for young artists whose families refused to fund their education. Her first recipient was a 16-year-old whose parents had threatened disownment for choosing art over pre-med. Emma mentored struggling young artists through social media, sharing not just technical advice, but emotional guidance for surviving unsupportive families. Her message was clear. Talent doesn't require family approval to flourish. She was breaking generational cycles, teaching kids that their worth wasn't determined by others' narrow definitions of success. As I finish this story, people ask whether I went too far. Was complete family estrangement too harsh? Should financial support automatically guarantee respect? Here's what I've learned. Toxic people don't change because you forgive them. They change because consequences force accountability. My parents never truly apologized because they never faced real repercussions until I created them. Emma flourished in an environment free from constant criticism and conditional acceptance. She's more confident, more creative, more genuinely happy than she ever was trying to earn approval from people determined to withhold it. The question isn't whether my revenge was justified. The question is how much emotional abuse should anyone tolerate for family loyalty? How many dreams should be sacrificed to maintain relationships with people who actively undermine your potential? Emma's success isn't just personal triumph. It's proof that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect someone from family members who don't deserve access to their life. If this story moved you but you still haven't subscribed to Revenge with Nick, you're basically saying you want to watch people get justice, but won't lift a finger to support it. Emma's story reached millions because subscribers shared it. If you don't subscribe, you're actively preventing other victims from getting their stories heard. Click subscribe now or live with knowing you chose apathy over action. And if you won't subscribe, at least have the courage to comment why. I'll wait. Today, Emma's paintings hang in galleries across multiple states. Her wedding this fall will be attended by people who've always believed in her talent. Somewhere across town, my parents sit in their empty house, finally understanding the true cost of calling an exceptional child a failure. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. But sometimes, justice requires action. Which story will you choose to support?